Well, we begin with breaking news out of Yemen, where the Houthi rebels have released pictures of the assault they say they conducted inside Saudi Arabia. They claim to have captured thousands of enemy soldiers, including Saudi troops. A spokesman said the operation in the Najran region was conducted in several stages over a number of months. He says at least 500 fighters were killed or injured.
Specialised infantry units at the front line cordoned a large number of the aggressors' personnel in Najran as they managed to set up ambushes as per the plan. Our forces opened a way to allow the aggressor personnel to step into the ambush. Specialised units cut off the rear supply line of the enemy from the east and the west. After that, the cordon was sealed around this personnel from all sides. The infantry units turned the ambush into an all-out offensive.
Well, earlier, speaking at the UN General Assembly, the Foreign Minister of Yemen's internationally backed government blamed Iran for the conflict in his country. Tehran has been accused of arming the Houthi rebels. Mohammed al-Hamdraman thanked Saudi Arabia for its role in helping fight the rebels.
Iran exploits the resources of its people in order to wage war, proxy war, using militias capable of the most heinous forms of destruction and sabotage. Since 2014, the Houthi militias, with support from Iran, have been destroying everything most beautiful and most valuable in my country.
Well, the Foreign Minister also criticised an ally, the United Arab Emirates, for its support of separatists in southern Yemen.
Our army has had to face myriad direct military attacks in violation of international law. These attacks were mounted by Emirati air assets. These attacks have undermined the stability of our homeland. And in this way, the Emirati aggression has undermined the noble goals of the coalition.
Well, Catherine Shakdam is head of Yemen department at the peacebuilding think tank Next Century Foundation and joins us by Skype from Crawley in the UK. Good to have you with us on the programme. First of all, what did you make of this intervention by the Yemeni foreign minister at the UN General Assembly?
I think it was, I don't think it's actually adding to the conversation. I think, if anything, it's muddying the waters in terms of the alliance that Saudi Arabia has with the UAE and other Gulf countries, another country within the region as far as Yemen is concerned and Yemen's war efforts. So I think it was unnecessary. And again, when it comes to supporting the secessionist movement in the south, it's very difficult because you have to ask yourself the question, do you support political self-determination as a principle of international law, or do you grandstand on the idea of every people having the right to exercise the democratic rights? So I think it's a debate that needs to take place, for another time, most definitely. And I think there are more pressing matters right now to address.
OK, I'm sorry to cut you off. We received those pictures earlier from Yemen, where the Houthi rebels say that they had captured enemy soldiers within Saudi Arabian territory. They've just had a press conference. We're waiting to hear more about that. But what do you make of this claim that the Houthis have captured thousands of enemy soldiers, including Saudi troops, within Saudi Arabia's territory?
I personally think it's more than a claim. I don't think that we have any reason to actually dispute their claim. And I think that, the images and videos coming through are actually affirming their statement. And this, which I find quite interesting, is the fact that Najran actually is part of those territories that have been, disputed by both Yemen and Saudi Arabia, with Yemen claiming that it's actually Yemeni land. And if you recall, a few years back, Abdel Malik al-Houthi actually warned the Saudi that should they continue to bomb Yemen and attack Yemen's sovereignty, they would have to redefine where Yemen's border lie, and that they would have to retake the 3 southern provinces that they deem theirs, and that's Najran, Nasser, and Jizan. So there's an interesting development here, and I think it's a pivot point in this war, where now the Yemeni are directly moving on Saudi land and therefore have breached the kingdom's sovereignty. It's quite interesting to see that with all the grand talk of a war coalition, Saudi Arabia is very much alone in this fight. And Washington and other Western capitals, for example, are nowhere to be seen coming to aid their ally in this direct attack against their territoriality.
Well, what does this say, in your view, about the overall state of this war? You mentioned that the Saudis are effectively operating alone in this coalition. No one's coming to their aid. Do you think the Houthis are slowly gaining the upper hand in some areas?
Yes. I do. I really do. And I think that this war of attrition has actually worked against Saudi Arabia in the sense that a lot of the Yemeni now, because of the famine and the immense hardship that they had to face, notwithstanding the human rights violation committed by Saudi Arabia, have not rallied around, the Houthi and this resistance movement because they feel that they're the only entity defending their land and their right to have a voice on the international scene. It's quite interesting. So now you see that the Houthis have popular legitimacy de facto and that they're using this to actually wield more power. And through their military advances, they're actually gaining even access to more weapons, more territory, and essentially pushing the Saudi against the wall. And again, the Saudi have had so far anyway very little help other than, countries selling them more weapons. And quite clearly, this is not even working in their favor. When it comes to the fact that the Houthi have planned this attack for month and month and month, then you need to ask yourself the question: where was the American intelligence? I mean, either they did know and didn't do anything to warn Saudi Arabia, or they didn't know, and then you need to ask yourself what it is that they do know and what is it that they do anyway for the Saudi. So I think it's quite interesting to see now that this attack is actually a pivot point in the war. And I'm sorry to say, but the Saudi are now losing on their ground. So it's not just that they lost the war, militarily speaking. They actually lost their territoriality right now. Their borders have been breached.
Now, in terms of the Saudi-led coalition, we did hear from the Yemeni foreign minister at the UN General Assembly, levelling criticism at the UAE, who are supposed to be, for all intents and purposes, part of this coalition. Do you think the Saudi-led coalition is starting to fracture?
It's not so much a fracture. I think that we need to be very clear about why the UAE agreed to enter this war coalition in the first place. They always made very clear that their interest was to stabilize South Yemen because their interest lies in South Yemen. They always wanted to have yet another waterway, by way of the seaport of Aden, to support their own economic interests, which makes complete sense. The UAE also wanted to kind of dial down on the influence that the Muslim Brotherhood, through al-Islah, has had in Yemen. And that's why they agreed, on the basis that Saudi Arabia would agree to kind of dial back its support of the Muslim Brotherhood. So I don't think that we should look towards the UAE and blame them for anything. I think that what they're doing is what they've always done, which is to try to actually wield soft diplomacy against military intervention because it doesn't work. Quite clearly, it hasn't worked. So I think that the Saudi would have to reassess their position. But again, it's their borders that have been breached, not the UAE. And the UAE did not sign up for, losing more of its people in a war that is clearly a lost one. America, however, did promise to support Saudi Arabia no matter what. And so far, we haven't seen much in terms of help. Again, other than actually bleeding Saudi Arabia dry of its billions of dollars to buy further weapons that are not helping on the ground right now, because then they fell actually into the hands of the Houthis, and they will wield them against Saudi Arabia for sure. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, I think.
OK, Catherine Shakdam, speaking to us from Crawley in the UK. Thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome.